Welcome to our vibrant network of governance, risk, compliance, and cybersecurity leaders. We share cutting-edge insights, best practices, and innovative strategies to empower professionals in navigating the dynamic cyber threat landscape. Join Circulo de CISO to ignite resilience and data protection across industries.
In continuing our discussion on decoding AI from fundamentals to future-proofing your business, and with me is Nidhi Pandey, and today she's going to walk us through security risks in AI applications. So Nidhi, we keep talking about risk-based approach for everything, and I think that has become the default word in every conversation. How do you relate the risk-based approach to security risks in AI applications? Nidhi?
All right. Now, before I get started with the risk associated with an AI system, it's important to understand the entire ecosystem of AI application, and for that, I would recommend users to watch the third part of the series, wherein I go through the entire ecosystem and the different components, because each of the modules or the component in an AI ecosystem brings in its own risks. And that will make it easier to put context around what we are discussing it as part of this session. Okay, so to get started with the security risk in AI. Now, the first risk, or the first and the most important risk, is with visibility. Right? Often when I talk to customers, I'm presented with a very common question or risk, which is of visibility. CISOs are concerned about getting visibility into who is accessing what AI applications. Is it sanctioned application or an unsanctioned application? Is the user sharing confidential information in AI application? Right? AI, anything you feed in AI, that's a data, right? The model is learning this information. So anyone who has access to the AI application has access to this data also, that you are putting it out there in the AI system. How do you track and monitor AI application usage? Who is accessing it? What is the user accessing it for? And then, what all different applications should be sanctioned? You get the visibility. Now you have to make sure what are essential for the business purpose. Now, all of the AI application possess some kind of risk. Now, we spoke about a typical AI application having several components which are working together, like the web servers, network services, database, and the compute resources. Now, if access to any of these components is inadequately managed, it could potentially expose sensitive data or allow unauthorized users to manipulate the system's behavior. And this could lead to severe security breaches or system misuse. And this brings us to the first pillar of zero trust, which is zero trust network access, right? So the access has to be given on the least privilege basis. Now, developers might be using insecure machine learning libraries, insecure prompt templates, plugins are very powerful. Developers might be making use of these components to build an AI system. Security is a concern even with these components, because these different components can read information from user system and send it to untrusted systems. I could download a third party plugin which could be interacting with probably a different AI ecosystem or AI application as well. So I'm giving this plugin or the application access to my privileged information, right? So unless you trust the system, you shouldn't be using it. User system is compromised. They might be giving excessive permission to the app ecosystem, which will bring in the possibility of remote code execution within your environment. Now, AI models themselves could be highly vulnerable. The data sets could be publicly accessible, like all the models we spoke about, vendors selling the data, right, making use of this ecosystem and creating a business out of it, and then selling this data to the AI or the ML models, right? When you use these models, these are all publicly accessible data. A hacker can very well inject malicious data and trick the system to provide biased outputs or hallucinated outputs, right? These could lead to data poisoning, data leaks, and so on. Now, we have heard about many such attacks in recent time as well, right? I mean, when you're using insecure data, the model is overgeneralizing the information based on this data and providing fake news, right? Twitter keeps having Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We keep hearing about fake news coming out there. This could trick the user into believing a specific piece of information. And why it happened? Because some hacker injected malicious piece of data into this AI model and tricked this entire system to believe that this information is true. Now, applying shift methodology and ensuring the security at the start of the software lifecycle for plugins and development of the models, it's a very important practice, right? So that you can do proactive vulnerability scanning as well. In previous section, we spoke about supply chain associated with this entire ecosystem. Now, there is a possibility of supply chain attack within your AI ecosystem. There are compromised software dependencies. When an external library or package is compromised, it acts as a malicious vector that exposes the entire system to security risk. And we all understand how a malware spreads laterally, right? If you just need to find one vulnerability in a library, in a plugin, execute remote code, uh, connect it to a command and control server, and then download the malware. That malware in turn can scan for other vulnerable systems and then launch the attack in the entire ecosystem. That's how the lateral movement of malware happens in an environment. The compromised infrastructure component vulnerabilities in foundation systems like databases, web servers can be exploited as well. These could lead to system breaches. Then there are poison data sets, right? Adversaries or hackers can inject malicious data inside the training sets negatively, and then it affect the output of the model, right? I can just trick the system into believing something. We just took example of Twitter based fake news, right? Because Gen AI applications are continuously learning from the new data. And if we inject a poisoned data or poisoned input, then we are changing the behavior of the model to think in a certain way. Then there are poisoned models itself, right? Malicious alterations inside the Gen AI model itself, inside the algorithm. There are instances of hackers taking a copy of the model and then changing the algorithm to make sure that the algorithm behaves in a certain way suitable for the attacker. So we have seen these kind of attacks happening, most recently. To just give you an example, ChatGPT was once impacted by a security issue in a third party library. So ChatGPT has multiple plugins, multiple libraries. It's talking to huge amount of data sets and information from many different sources, right? So one of the third party libraries had a malicious code. And because of that, it could lead to information disclosure vulnerability. And in March 2023, what happened was, because of this, users could have access to other users' messages. This is a vulnerability. This is a security risk. Now, moving on to developers, right? When you build an enterprise AI application, or when someone is building an AI application, it is not just as simple as adding an LLM model. You are required to add AI infrastructure, which can have a higher prominence of things like containers, serverless environments. There is a whole host of models available for AI applications to talk to. I give you an example of Hugging Face, which has got around 6,000 plus models, and not all of them are properly secured. There could be some insecure, vulnerable packages as well. There are vast number of plugins and agents which can make application work more efficiently, but at the same time, vulnerability scanning of these plugins is equally important, right? And most recently, OWASP, based on all these vulnerabilities and the risks that we spoke about, OWASP has a list of top 10 vulnerabilities for AI systems. The most common one, and on top of the list, is the prompt injection, right? It's on top of this OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities. And what exactly it means? It means gaslighting the AI system. And you don't need to be a programmer to gaslight an AI or to have prompt injection being triggered. You just need to type in plain simple English commands, and attacker can use a series of prompts in order to trick or manipulate the application into displaying the data, which is not usually allowed by traditional guardrails. To give you an example, I can trick an AI system to believe that it's a bank manager of a reputed bank and give me the details of a user. Right? GPT-3 was compromised in Twitter some time back, wherein one of the users started a thread for remote work, and it tricked the system to send threat to the president of US. Later, they removed that application from Twitter, and it created a lot of stir. But that actually happened. Then there is insecure output handling. The LLM generated outputs could have malicious JavaScript. There could be links to download malware, which could connect it to the backend CNC server. Then there is training data. There is a risk involved in hackers manipulating the data, and I cannot talk, enough about this big security risk, right? If you don't sanitize this data, a malicious user of the application can try to influence and inject toxic data into the model. I can put in the social security number, credit card details. The model can be tricked to provide credit card details or confidential information of a user. These are all insecure input output handling issue. Then there is also the vulnerability with respect to denial of service. And this is not the normal, DDoS attack or the normal network denial of service attack. This is a model denial of service. Attacker can use automated scripts or tools to send high volume of input, overwhelming the LLMs to process this information. Right, that causes a lot of stress in the entire ecosystem, entire infrastructure where this AI application is hosted. Now, the data has to be secured, so you need to have some kind of measures taken to protect sensitive data disclosure. And then insecure design, we have spoken a lot about it. That's also one of the top 10 vulnerabilities published by OWASP. Now, there are more and more sophisticated attacks, getting developed every second day today, which are based on AI systems, impersonating scams, deep fakes. And we spoke about the Purple Apple scenario, right? In Times of India, that's a fake news. So fake audios, we don't yet have a strict compliance available from government for these AI systems as well. In fact, I was going through a couple of YouTube videos wherein some of the songs were actually impersonated on a different singer's voice, and there is no compliance or regulation on protecting these kind of activities by an AI system. So yeah, this, to summarize what all I spoke about, having a strict AI protection strategy for this entire ecosystem becomes very critical for any enterprise today, so that you can mitigate the risks, and also protect this entire ecosystem and still continue behaving for the good things which comes with the AI applications.
Nidhi, you touched on several risks, right? You talked about the risk at the application layer.
Yep.
You spoke about the risks at the model layer, which is the engine. And you also spoke about the risks in the infra layer.
Yep.
Right? So people cannot ignore any of these layers. But then you also touched on specifics where you spoke about poison data sets,
Mhm.
poison models. And today we have OWASP, which lists down the top 10 vulnerabilities which impact the AI system. And you highlighted very specifically the prompt injections and how it can deceive the application or the models to hallucinate or give inaccurate data. Then you also spoke about insecure output, right? So there could be confidential data, but the system is deceived to provide those classified information to unauthorized users. And last not but the least, but you also spoke about the DDoS, denial of service, right? And I would say denial of service is one of the oldest type of attacks, right?
Absolutely.
And it's still relevant, right? I mean,
Yes.
it takes different
Just a
forms.
different form. Yeah.
Yeah. And finally, you spoke about every organization should have a strategy for AI. Now, I have one last question before we wrap up this session,
Mhm.
specific to risk. Who is responsible or accountable for AI risk management? Who should be?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's actually the responsibility of the organization. When we talk about enterprises, right, it's the responsibility of the enterprises today to have the right amount of access measures deployed for the AI ecosystem. Right now, these access measures could be what kind of privileges are to be given for plugins, what kind of privileges are to be given for developers, what LLM models needs to be downloaded. Now, when we talk about the model development itself, like there are a lot of custom models which are being developed for specific use cases. Now, organizations have to make sure that they use shift left methodology to prevent any kind of configuration risks or prevent any kind of vulnerabilities associated with the packages, regular scanning. Now, this is all a combined responsibility, I would say, for the organizations to implement these security measures. Now, when it comes to infrastructure, there are some aspects which are users' responsibility and some aspects which are the provider's responsibility, right? So, providers like AWS, Azure, they need to make sure that the infrastructure is secure and hackers cannot have access to the hypervisor layer to provide any kind of or develop any kind of malicious behavior, right? And the system behaves in a certain way and effectively. So that's the provider's responsibility. But overall, when we move up towards model layer and application layer, it's the organization's responsibility to implement strict security measures throughout their organizations to implement zero trust. And I'm not just talking about zero trust of workload. I'm talking about zero trust for ML models, zero trust for plugins, zero trust for applications. Consider it as a normal user who's trying to access plugins, trying to access internet applications, or trying to access data. Then there is security of database that need to be adopted, so that you make sure that the data set is secure and nobody has access to your internal data environment as well. So it's a combined effort, I would say, for organizations to secure this entire ecosystem.
Nidhi, well, if I were to summarize,
Yeah.
right, we're talking about a shared responsibility model,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So at each of these layers. And when it comes to the organization perspective,
Mhm.
I think the enterprise risk management team would still kick in, and every single player in this life cycle will have to play a role.
Yes,
Right?
absolutely.
So if, let's say, if it is a development team which is building the model, they still need to adopt the shift left
Yeah.
development model. DevSec
Yeah.
ops, this would be the right way to go, right?
Yeah.
So risks have to be identified. It's not a one-time exercise, it's a continuous exercise,
Sure. Sure.
right? So,
Yeah,
so people
definitely.
need to continuously assess the weakness and also have a designated plan or designated people to act on the vulnerabilities identified so that they can treat them on a priority basis, because some of these could have a wider impact to the organization, and sometimes it may also impact their reputation as well as their share values if it is a publicly traded company. And if they are in healthcare or if they're handling PII data, then the consequences could be far much more than we could actually fathom with
Yes.
respect to the data impact. So
Yes.
maybe with that thought,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, sorry, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, no, just another point. Like you were bang on, right? I mean, there's DevSecOps team involved. There is network team involved for the communication happening between the app to the model. Then there is access measures which are involved. Then there is an infrastructure layer which is involved. So everyone has to work collectively. That's the responsibility is a shared responsibility across different groups of an organization to make sure that this entire ecosystem is secure.
Thank you, Nidhi. Thank you for sharing your thoughts in terms of security risks in AI applications. Viewers, if in case you missed the previous episodes, please make time to watch them, because there are very interesting, important points which Nidhi has shared in her previous conversation with me. And we have two more episodes coming up, and the next episode is going to be on AI protection strategies. So please watch out for it. And if you're not subscribed to our channel, please subscribe and follow us for more interesting conversations such as this. So look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Thank you.